Hello and welcome. My name is David Waddell, and I am the Executive Director of the Central South Region of the Texas Restaurant Association. Today, we have a very informative session on best practices for restaurants. This is something that we have been looking to do for a while, and we're glad you're all to be able to get on. So today, before I introduced our very respective panelists, I do want to say that if you have a question, please go into the chat box and just write it there. And then if we have time, we certainly will answer it, or during the event, we can certainly ask the questions. Okay, so there's lots to unpack today, and I know you don't want to hear me speak a whole lot, so let's get started. It is my pleasure to introduce Vanessa Miller from County Line Barbecue, and I'd like to let Vanessa just tell us a little bit about yourself and chairperson being of the Austin chapter.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is my second year as the chair of the Greater Austin chapter of the Texas Restaurant Association. And we are just really excited to have this conversation because we do get called quite a bit about different things, from food cost all the way to the security of our restaurants and our small businesses. So we're really looking forward to the opportunity to learn best practices and what we can implement in our restaurants. I've been in the business since I was 16 years old. I've worked for many different restaurants, but I've worked for County Line Barbecue Restaurants for the past 15 years. I'm their director of special events, but I have my hand in so many things. So I look forward to asking lots of questions and giving just any input I can as well. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Vanessa. Our next guest is Officer Frank Creasy from the Austin Police Department. He's incognito. There he is. Frank, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on, and just give us a little background of yourself, sir.
Thank you very much, Officer Frank Creasy. Apologize for the glasses, they're prescription, and I just came in from the outside, so that's why they're dark. So I forgot to grab my other ones. I've been an officer with the city of Austin for a little over 32 years. Currently, I'm in the community engagement unit, or district representatives unit in Northwest Austin, which we deal with, citizen safety, active threat training. We actually do security surveys on residents. We do commercial building surveys out of our office. I'm trained in that. I'm also a certified crime prevention inspector with the state of Texas through Texas Crime Prevention Association. So I've been in the position I'm in now for 7 years.
Great. Last but not least is a Detective Ken Cassidy, president of the Austin Police Association. And let me just say, I've had the opportunity to talk with Ken, and I tell you what, when I called him to ask him would he do this, he was more excited to say yes than I was to have him, and I certainly appreciate it. So Detective Cassidy, President Cassidy, would you please give a little bit about yourself to the audience, please?
All right. Thank you for having me, David. And it is an honor to be on with all the restaurateurs today. I started off working for Dave & Buster's when I was in high school there in Dallas. And I have much respect for what it takes to run a restaurant, and also to wait tables, which is what I did many years ago. So total respect from me. But I've been with the Austin Police Department for going on 26 years. I have never worked in a position like Frank does, but we have, trained different banks around the city on handling, how to work with and how to function when you have an active robber, robbing your bank. I've never worked with restaurants, but I'm sure Frank has. That's why I wanted to have him on here today. I've worked in patrol for several years. I was a detective in organized crime for about 7 years, working with the Mexican cartels and other organized crime going on in the community. And then I've been the president of the Police Association for the past 7 years. I'm still a detective in the police department. I still go out and work patrol overtime, on the weekends, usually downtown. So I'm very familiar with all the restaurants down there. Of course, we eat out 4 or 5 times a week, so we're all familiar with the restaurants in Austin. Again, it's an honor to be here, and I am on full-time release, which is where the officers have a fund that pays for my salary. And so all I do is work with officers on workers' comp issues, on labor issues, defending officers, when they've done right and they're accused of doing something that they shouldn't have. But it's a very controversial job, but I'm happy to do it, and I'm happy to represent the police officers. I'm honored to do that every day. But enough about me, and I'm ready to answer your questions if you have any.
Thank you guys for your service.
Thanks,
Thank
Detective Vanessa and Ken and Frank. Excuse me for not, Detective and Officer. Thank you again for being here. And as I was telling you, Detective Cassidy, the reason why we're here is we've been monitoring as an association things that have been going on in our industry for our restaurateurs who are our members, our valued members, as I was telling you about. And one of the things that we've been seeing over the last couple of years is an influx of, violent crimes, break-ins at our restaurants. And we know that there are reasons for that. So one of the reasons why we are doing this today is that we start to see more and more headlines. So with that, let me just ask you a couple of questions and we'll go around the room with this. This is for you, Detective Cassidy and Officer Chris. Can you explain the difference between the Austin Police Department and the Austin Police Association? Again.
David, you were broken up. Can you repeat that?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was saying, can you explain to our audience the difference between the Austin Police Department and the Austin Police Association?
Sure. We're all members of the Austin Police Department. The Austin Police Association is the union or association, whatever you want to call it, here in Texas, that represents our officers. So, I'm still a detective in the police department, but I'm on full-time release to run the association with 3 other people. We bargain labor contracts. We do work with officers on workers' comp issues. We do a lot of community activities, work a lot with the NAACP and LULAC and all the different organizations around town that, especially that represent and speak on behalf of minorities. But I also help run a 501c3 here that helps police officers and their families when they have issues like cancer or they're killed in the line of duty or whatever it might be. We're just there we're that support system that the department can't provide. We are allowed to bargain over our wages and benefits. There's very few people in the state that can do that anymore. It's basically us, fire, and that's really about it. So that's a very important part of my life, which I'm dealing with now, that we're negotiating a labor contract with the city of Austin. But the difference is we are the kind of the political arm. We're there to support the officers, and the police department is there to support the city, the citizens, get out and answer 911 calls. We do a lot in the community also, but that is the separation between the city police department and the association.
Great, thank you. One question I have is, we've seen the uptick in vandalism and things like that. I was wondering if you and Officer Frank could talk to that. What are you seeing out there? I know there's some issues, that are basically germane because of what we've gone through with COVID, but being on the street and having, a great dedicated staff that you have, I'd like to know what you think and what you're seeing out there.
Frank?
Get back on video. Unfortunately, our property crimes, we have issues with those. A lot of it, unfortunately, goes back to some of our staffing issues. We don't have the proactive enforcement, the ability for the proactive enforcement that we've had in the past, where our officers are out looking for stuff. Right now, they're just responding to priorities, priority 0, priority 1 calls. And we can kind of see that effect. And furthermore, is a lot of the reports that people make for those calls go through a 311 system now, and there's a delayed with the information getting back to us. In our office up here north, we use a lot of evidence-based policing to kind of, that's what we were doing before the pandemic and before COVID and our staffing crisis, is we'd look at reports and we could adjust some of our patrol activities and our crime, and basically some of our crime reduction things to those communities where we would see an uptick in reports like car burglaries, those kind of things, vandalism, and that type offenses we could address quicker. Unfortunately, with the delay in the 311 system, it's sometimes 2 to 3 weeks before that information is getting to us. And then now with the manpower, our office was cut 50% with the initial cut in January of last year. And so now there's only 2 of us in Northwest Austin for 67 square miles to handle what our office does. What I want to stress to people is I think what is happening now is frustration with some people is reports aren't being made. Y'all are seeing things that are occurring, but I don't think people are actually reporting them to us, unfortunately. And, as I told people, there's an old saying, if we don't know about it, it didn't happen in our realm. And that's an unfortunate thing. And so I still want to stress to people, yes, I know there's a delay, but it's important to make that report to let us know there's things going on so that we get that information.
You said something about evidence-based data, which I found very interesting. And so when you see a trend going on in the area, you said you switch your guys to that area. And then does it get reported to those businesses that have been affected or impacted by, their report?
Like I said, that's one of the things. It just wasn't sending out, okay, guys, hey, concentrate on this area. It was some of that, but it was also in our office doing some of the crime reduction stuff. We would actually reach out to that area, and we'd go knock on doors, do that kind of stuff. My partner John Gabrielson in the Domain area, that's primarily his. He basically created basically a group of the hotel business owners, both the Endeavor Real Estate, now Northwoods Retail, and Simon. And quarterly, they would come together and have basically an awareness meeting amongst all the managers and those kind of things. And that was really effective. And it helped, keep communication lines open amongst the different businesses. We'd look for trends. And so when we'd start seeing a trend like that, we could reach out to those businesses in that group and say, hey guys, because we had the email, we had an email base where we could just, blast an email out. Hey, we're seeing a an uptick in these kind of incidences going on. Just be aware of it. And we'd give them some safety pointers for their employees. The other thing we did with it, with those crime reduction, depending on what it is we'd reach out, hey, if you want us to come in, maybe if you're going to have a staff meeting, you give us 30 minutes. We come in and talk to your staff and give them some crime reduction things or things to be aware of when they're leaving and things like that, especially in the restaurant business. I never worked in the restaurant world. I was an assistant manager at 7-Eleven before I got into law enforcement. The girl I dated in college was an assistant manager at Steak and Ale. And so I knew, that realm of that world. And so, late at night closings, some of the safety issues, don't let people go to the cars by themselves when they're leaving the restaurant at night. How to kind of diffuse situations and those kind of things, we kind of stress. And the thing with our offices is we can, depending on what the organization is, say for wait staff and those kind of things, we can change up kind of our safety presentation to some of the things that are more common to that environment. And so we kind of tweak some of our presentations to our audience. But so with the evidence-based policing, when we'd see those kind of upticks, we had those avenues that we could reach out. We got good contacts with our neighborhood association presidents and those kind of things. And so those are some of the avenues.
So may I chime in for just a
Yeah,
second?
please,
Is that something that you guys are instigating, these community gatherings where everyone can kind of speak up and community awareness? Are you guys instigating that, or would that be something as an association I should look into hosting?
It goes both ways. And
Okay.
the Domain, there was some communication blockage between two of the major groups. And it was just, had some previous history basically. So John basically was the catalyst to bring everybody together and start that. But if you've already got a group, say all your restaurant owners in Northwest Austin, you're already communicating and you're like, hey, Frank, can we bring you into this group and basically, add you into it? More than happy to. So it works both ways.
So I have a question also. There's a lot of talking about, picking up the mess, right? You're going back and you're looking at evidence, but I think we all understand exactly what we've been experiencing because of the lack of officers that we have in our communities, and it's very unfortunate. And we're so grateful that you guys are still with us and ready to support us. But I think prevention is something that a lot of people on this call want to know. What can we do? What are some of the basics that you can share with everyone on the call about restaurants that will help us continue to prevent this crime until we can get more officers in the force?
And thanks for bringing that up. So a lot of those things are, we stress with, talking to your wait staff, how to address. Unfortunately, it's just not in y'all's environment. I see it across. I mean, we see it in traffic now. It's just people's attitudes are just, it's just, unfortunately, and I see it going into restaurants and stuff where right now, my wife and I are eating out a lot because we're remodeling our kitchen. So we have nothing to cook with right now because everything's out. But we know that, your staffing levels are low and people will get irritated because it's taking longer to get their food and those kind of things. And so it's unfortunate that people's, I guess, attitude, just put it bluntly, sucks want they feel like that they need to be waited on immediately and stuff, and they're not taking into consideration everything else. And so, we want to stress the safety. We know your wait staff is, because, you might have two or, depending on your restaurant, you might need short wait staff. So, there's the old saying, if I remember the old saying, being in the weeds, they're in the weeds all the time and trying to get to everybody,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that that's a great idea, is definitely the communication with our wait staff and just talking about, for example, at the county line recently, we had somebody using fraudulent credit cards. They were stolen. And so we were able to talk to the staff and say, hey, if you see these people come in, please let us know. And so, yeah, that communication and that transparency with our staff. And so they did get caught. And so we were able to work with the police enforcement to make sure that happened. And that was with great communication with our staff and our management. But I think there's also just concerns about how do we keep property? How do we keep our property intact and our guests' property? There was been a lot of car break-ins. So what are things that you guys recommend for us as business owners?
Yeah, and so that's one of the big things is a lot of the car burglary issue, the property crime thefts. It's increased a lot. A lot of that, they understand that we don't have the officers that we did before that are going in and patrolling the areas and stuff like that. And it goes back to our evidence-based policing, where we would look for the upticks of the sorry, my sergeant and my partner just walked in. So, so that's some of the things. I think having well-lit parking lots, I know that's something with some of y'all having your space, you're not the owner of the space. So some of the infrastructure things that you need to work on is at the request of the landlord, the property manager, but increasing lighting in the parking lot, stressing signage to your people that are your guest, that hey, look, there is issues, have signs on the door say, please make sure that all your property is secure in your vehicle before you come in. Those kind of things. That's some of the stuff that we stress with some of our programs that we used to do. We were working real heavy before the pandemic with, you know, the Love It. We had a Love It Lock It campaign that we're trying to bring back now. Basically, you know, if you love what you've got, then lock it up. The 9 p.m. routine was one of the things we kind of stressed to people. And that, you know, to be honest with you, a majority of our car burglaries would be prevented if people locked their car doors. There's most of the vehicles, a lot of the vehicles aren't broken into. The doors are just open and the property is taken out of it. Our auto thefts, over 50% of our auto thefts will be prevented in Austin if people would lock their cars. So a lot of the auto thefts, they're not breaking in and the keys are left in the vehicle and the car is unlocked. So those are kind of things that we need to stress to people. It's a personal responsibility for crime reduction.
Thanks. Hey, Frank and Ken, question for you is that I know that you guys have districts, and I know, Ken, we talked about this, is that it'd be a help for us if we could get a list of the districts and who we would contact, because what happens is our restaurateurs call us and say, this has happened and we need somebody to contact, and we know you guys are extremely busy and short-staffed like all of us are, but I know we talked about that, and maybe, you know, we'll get that list, and then when people call in and say this happened, we know where to go. We did have a question about if a restaurant had a video of someone, you know, breaking in, they bring it to you, what would be the next steps, and could you guys, you know, go out and apprehend the person?
Sure. So that I was going to touch on the last question that'll lead into this question.
Okay.
But one of the big things that we use downtown are what we call our halo cameras, which are places where the city have cameras all through the downtown area, and we catch major crime and petty crime on those all the time, and it just makes clearing the case and making an arrest so much easier. So what I would recommend to all the restaurants is, if you can afford it, is one, to have a camera not only inside but outside if possible, because it really helps having that video evidence. And then the second thing is, if you can't afford it and you don't have the money to buy the camera system, at least get a sign printed that says, you know, these premises in our parking lot are under 24-hour surveillance. And sometimes that scares off the burglars. But Frank is right. You know, if people would just, and even this needs to go for your employees too, is that do not leave change, do not leave anything in sight in your vehicle. Put it in the trunk before you go into work, or and just we can't encourage that enough, because if people can't see something that they want in the car, they're not going to break into your car. And you know, I had this conversation with a lady. I took a burglary call down on Barton Springs the other day. She was angry and upset, and, you know, when are we going to get her stuff back? You know, what I wanted to tell her was, we're going to try our best, but ma'am, you shouldn't have had your purse and your wallet and your Apple computer sitting out on the front seat where people could see it. And that's the honest truth, which is, if she just would have put that stuff in the trunk, we never would have been there taking the report. And believe it or not, we actually solved that. And there was a homeless person down the street that had stolen her stuff. You know, the money was gone and the credit cards were gone, but at least we got the Apple computer back. But you know, just we can't emphasize enough of just locking your personal belongings in the trunk.
Ken, you just brought up, you know, another issue, and I don't want to go too far off, but homelessness and homeless people, you know, traveling and perusing the areas. If for some, our restaurateurs, our members, see someone out there looks suspicious, I know you're short-staffed, what is the best thing to do? Just to document what they see, and just talk about the video, but what else can they do to help you help them? If you understand.
So, you know, if they're homeless and they're trespassing on your premises, which we have a lot with the restaurants, is you need to go ahead and call 911 and get us to come out there. Now, what we don't recommend is, you know, you might want to ask them to leave yourself, but don't let it become a confrontational situation. Let us do that. And we'll come as fast as we can. You know, sometimes it might take 5 minutes. Sometimes it might be 2 hours, depending on the call load. But you know, try not to confront the individuals. You know, kindly ask them to leave, and if they don't, just come in and call 911. That's our job. And you know, we have these problems, dozens and dozens of times every day that we deal with in the city of Austin. But just try to be respectful, and realize they're homeless, and it just we'll do our job, but what we don't want to see is confrontation between anybody, because that can lead to violence, but that's about a priority 2 call for us, so that's up there. We'll come out and try to do the best we can. And again, that goes into having the cameras, because sometimes, these people will panhandle your customers at the door, or maybe even try to rob them, which happens fairly often. And when you have that on video, it's much stronger evidence than just someone's word.
Thanks.
One other thing on that too, real
Go
quick.
ahead, Frank. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When you are calling in, that is a criminal trespass. It's not a homeless issue. One of the things that we've seen now, some of the 311 operators are not part. Sometimes if you get a 311 operator, they might not be part of the police department. I think Austin Energy handles the majority of the 311 calls, and then it goes over to the police department. On a lot of the homeless issues, as soon as you say the word homeless, it's shipped over to a 311 operator, and they create an SR case number. And if it's a homeless issue, a lot of time it gets sent to district representatives. So the one thing I stress, if you have a criminal trespass issue, just don't mention the word homeless. Just say you have a subject on your property that you need to issue a criminal trespass to, because you do not want them on your property, and you need an officer to come out and do a criminal trespass.
Great job. Now I want to turn this around. We talked from the law enforcement. I want to turn this to Vanessa. Vanessa, you have been in the event planning industry for many, many years, and with COVID and the uptick, tell me what you do. What are you seeing in booking events now, and what are the customers asking you about security before they even book you?
Yeah, so this kind of happened before COVID, was just, with large group gatherings. Unfortunately, there was, there's hate crimes, there's all kinds of security issues, as far as like just someone who's going to come in armed and maybe harm the people of an event. So before COVID even hit, there was a lot of conversations about, exit routes. So a lot of our events from the corporate world want to have a safety exit, plan. They want to know if our staff is prepared to handle helping people evacuate. So it was very interesting. And then once COVID came along, not only were mass gatherings and things like that, with just the safety, if there was, a shooter or a fire or anything, there was also the threat of disease. And then also, I think just the mindset shifted where people were a little bit more desperate. And so, so it was really interesting in the events world, what we've been dealing with security. And so I have had detectives and officers come out on the event side of the world and speak to event coordinators and talk about safety plans and how to execute those and how to train your staff. And then now I'm working on, exactly what you said, Tracy, was just like staff awareness and communication. I think that's so key. Because sometimes, maybe one of our staff saw someone that looked a little odd in the parking lot, but we didn't mention anything. So nothing was mentioned. And then we had 3 cars broken into, but we could have prevented that if we just ask the questions and bring it up, and we're in constant communication. So also with events, because we have had to, usually I have security, right? We always hire off-duty police officers for our events that need extra security. And unfortunately, money changed, right? I didn't have the budget, and also you guys don't have the manpower. So that's really been a concern, honestly, for some of our events now that the events world is back in motion, 1,000%, it seems like. So any pointers that you can give to us on, evacuation plans, and then also just.
So I can touch on that. So actually, my partner John and I are both adjunct instructors with the alert facility out of San Marcos. And so we teach active threat to civilians. And so we actually have a program where we come in and we teach, and we just don't, we call it active threat. It used to be everybody called it active shooter, but we call it active threat. And we cover a lot of those things about looking for the, you see something, you say something. You see something out of normal, bring it up to somebody. Because, you know, a lot of times we're teaching, we're teaching the class and, we've taught it at IBM and those kind of places in the corporate world. So we tell them, you know, somebody might not, if there's something that you see that's suspicious, that's out of place, you need to say something. And that training right there we do, and we can do that. It usually goes about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes because of questions and stuff, but we try to we can do it in an hour. I've actually done an online version to a group.
And is there a certification?
It's just
a flat out class.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I think that's something
to
very desirable to make.
In addition to that, we also have created our own personal safety awareness class that we put on through our office up here north. And we've tweaked that to whatever, because in the domain we have several apartment complexes that are 55 and older. And so we actually adjust some of our training to that crowd because we start dealing with some of the online scams and stuff that target the elderly and those kind of things. So, in our office, we can tweak something so like you say, I would really like to cover these points with this group or this wait staff, and we can go in and we can, let's concentrate a little bit more on this area than we do on another area. Or if we need to add something in to deal with things specific to the restaurant industry, we can do that too. And so that's something that we do. That's kind of our forte, and is the district representatives.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Ken and Frank, I've noticed, I've been reading about the police department looking to add overtime to the staff between the hours of 5 and 9. As it relates to restaurant break, I mean, is it because you're seeing an uptick between those hours? And that's pretty good hours for our restaurateurs, right? Because that's when people are coming to dinner. So have you seen more interest in that from the ranks and files for overtime?
Sure. We're so short that we've been depending on overtime for the last year, and people have become exhausted working their normal 40-hour work week, and then add another 20 or 30 hours on top of that of overtime on your off days, and people just became burnt out over a period of time, and they're like, listen, I can't do this anymore. One thing that you need to know is you cannot force a police officer in the state of Texas to work overtime unless there's like a natural disaster. So when you're off, they can't call you and tell you to come back in. It's volunteer, and that's fortunately or unfortunately, that's the way it's written into law. So it became so bad over the past 2 or 3 months to where we weren't filling shifts that should have 10 people on it. We're only having 3 and 4 people come to work on certain shifts. So what the chief offered was, well, if time and a half is not good enough, then we'll pay you double time. And it's going to work probably for about 4 or 5 months, and then people will become tired again. And the one thing that, this is just not an Austin problem. All the big cities around the country are going through the same thing. Frank and I were hired on to replace all the Vietnam era veterans that retired. And now that we're retiring, now we're looking for all the people that we hired, 20 to 30 years ago. And we're losing, normally we lose about 5 people every month up until about a year ago. And then since the protests, we lose probably about anywhere from 15 to 25 people a month. And it's just way, they go to other departments because they don't feel supported by the city of Austin city council, or they retire and move into private industry. So, everybody's looking for employees now. I put my resume together a few weeks ago because I'll be retiring at the end of the year. And it's amazing, how many people need good employees, and there's no shortage of jobs out there. And I know y'all, I was just in Vegas yesterday, And, I was at Caesar's Palace, one of the, exclusive places there, and all their restaurants had plenty of seats, but huge lines because there just weren't enough employees to work. And I know y'all are experiencing the same. So that was made our experience there not as nice as it could have been, because we had to wait for hours just to get into a restaurant where you had open chairs all over the place. So that was very frustrating.
Ken, thanks. We have a question that came up that asked, are there some tips that you can share to recognize human trafficking?
Frank, you want to cover that, or you want me to do it? I guess I will.
I'm sorry, I was on mute, Ken.
Can you make any recommendations on how to notice human trafficking if they see that in a restaurant? Or
if you feel like there's a human trafficking case, call 911. Give them some specifics, because that human trafficking incident will be a priority call. And so, especially, what is it that is making you aware that it's a potentially human trafficking incident? What is it that wait staff person, what was happening at the table? What was going on?
Give some examples of what maybe have been success cases where there was suspicious behavior, or I think this is new awareness, I guess, for our industries, the hospitality industry. So and if there's specific training that you guys can recommend, I think this is definitely something that all of us want to make sure our staff.
Well, I will tell you, one of the things that has occurred is actually TABC has taken a lead role in human trafficking issues because of the bars and those kind of things. And so there's some training. I've got a contact at TABC, and I'd like to reach out to him if I could figure out if there's some specific training that they're offering the restaurant industry and those kind of things. Then let me see if there's something. And then if you want to, I'll put what I'll do is I'll top my email address in here in my direct line. And if you want to send me an email with your contact information, I'll reach out to TABC and find out if they have specific training for wait staff and those kind of things.
That's great, Frank. And this is what we're trying to accomplish today, is to be resources to you and vice versa. And TABC has been great to us. We're partners with them and vice versa. So anytime we can mesh with each other, it's a great thing. So that's great.
10 minutes.
I'm sorry, Ken.
Someone was knocking on my door. I just had to.
Oh, okay. Time is kind of running out, but I do have another question. I want to switch gears here. September 1st, open carry started. How is it out there, guys? And what can you help our restaurateurs in terms of keeping safe and noticing things? And what do they do if they see something against what's going against the law?
Sure. I'll start, and if I leave something off, Frank, just let me know. I work downtown a lot, especially on the 6th Street area, the 4th Street, and even West 6th Street with all the bars and restaurants. What we're seeing is, first of all, if you're 51% or more alcohol, you cannot have a firearm inside the premises. So we get a lot of calls on that. If you see people standing in the parking lot displaying a gun outside of a holster, you need to call 911 immediately. We probably take about 2 to 3 firearms off of 6th Street every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night during the busy times. People now are supposed to carry a gun that they want to carry one in an approved holster, so that if it's not an approved holster, it makes it unlawfully carrying a weapon. So that's one of the issues we deal with downtown. Of course, they're getting checked at the door. A lot of times the bartenders and wait staff will call and say, hey, we have 2 guys in the corner of our restaurant that just displayed a gun. And then you need to call 911 immediately. You can't do that. So my experiences are with downtown. I did not like the law change. I testified against it. And the reasons is that I thought what we had was sufficient. You no longer need training to carry one. And we've had people accidentally shoot themselves. We'll take handguns off people downtown and they've got the wrong caliber of ammunition in there because they haven't had the training. And that's one of our goals for this next legislative session, is to at least at the very bare minimum require some type of training. So we just, almost everybody we stop downtown now has a gun on their person. So, and that's something your staff needs to be aware of, and your restaurant owners, is that it's just much more liberal now, and the people carrying sidearms probably would never have done it before the law change. And I don't like the law change, but I also know how the legislative session works, and we have to go, if we have a problem with it, we have to go try to fix it instead of complaining about it, which we will do this next session. But those are the things that we're noticing. If someone brings a gun, please don't confront them, and don't even say anything to them. Just call 911 immediately and let us handle that. I think it's okay to go out in front of your business and ask a homeless person or anybody that you don't want there to leave your premises. But if it involves a sidearm of any type or a weapon of any type, please call us and let us handle it, because that is a priority zero call, which is get a response of lights and sirens, people trying to get to your business as fast as they can. So that's kind of my take on the handgun issue.
Thank you. Vanessa, being a restaurant. Oh, go ahead, Frank. I'm sorry.
If I'm mistaken, as private property owner, you have the right to, I know that's a catch for y'all, because you're going to lose some businesses for that. But one of the malls here in town, the way they don't post any signs, but as long as nobody sees the weapon, it stays concealed. But as soon as they see somebody open carrying, they come up and say, "Hey, look, we're not on our premises. We're not allowed to be here on our premises. Can you remove the weapon from the premises?" And ask them to leave. But as long as it's concealed, it's like I as a police officer, I carry all the time, and you'll never know when I come in your restaurant. You'll never know the weapon's on me the way I carry my weapon. You have some people out there that are that same way, and then you have those that I don't like to open carry. I know why the law was initially open to change it that way, is because some licensed carry people accidentally displayed their weapon, and they lost their opportunity to carry. So there should be some caveat, but I don't like to open carry.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Frank. Vanessa, being on the restaurant side, have you seen an uptick? I mean, I know it's hard to detect, but have you had any?
Yeah, we were worried that we were just going to have some gun-toting people coming in our family establishment, and we really haven't had too much of an issue. So we're pretty grateful for that. But we are more out in the suburbs, so we're not really exposed to maybe some of the downtown excitement. Is what I'm going to call it. But yeah, for us, it hasn't been too much of an issue, but I know that it probably depends on location for the restaurants to be.
Thank you.
And I know, speaking of that, so one of the things before the pandemic hit, we were watching some of the restaurants that had the 3607 and 30 signs that basically prohibited carry in their establishments before the open carry.
Right.
We did see an increase of car burglaries in those places, but then I'm going to take it back to, they targeted the F-250s and the pickup trucks, and probably had the NRA stickers and those kind of things. Like I don't have any of that on my vehicle. And so, but that was some of the stuff that we saw during that time, is some of the, especially in Northwest Austin, because you're so close to the, Liberty Hill and that area. A lot of people come into Austin and the Northwest area to hit some of the restaurants on the Austin area. And so some of the restaurants we were seeing some uptick in some of the car burglaries, and they were specifically targeting the ones with weapons in them and stuff.
Okay. Frank and Ken, question for you before I wrap up. The Texas Restaurant Association wants to be a resource to you. How can we help you help us? What are some of the things we can do for our members to help you? We know, we're going through workforce, or just like you are. I mean, we could tell tales upon tales. Don't need to tell you. What are some of the things we could do to be a resource for you?
I
Go ahead, Frank.
think one of the biggest things is this right here that we're doing now. Open line of communication is huge, especially, and I don't know if, I get you're responsible for the whole state of Texas. You represent restaurants all over Texas. Are y'all broke down into like individual areas? Like, does the Austin area have a group that meets the specific to Austin and those kind of things?
You're looking at the chairwoman right now, Vanessa Miller. There she is. You got it right there.
We've got 160 members in the greater Austin area, but we have 23 chapters all over the state.
Right.
So there's different needs in different areas. So we have a meeting that's next. We do monthly meetings usually. We wanted to do this webinar first, but then we would love to expand this conversation into like one of our member meetings and meet in person and really have a structured agenda. So
that would be awesome, and I have an outlet that would be that we could probably segue into some of your other state chapters, and that's through the Texas Crime Prevention Association.
Great.
I'm a member of that. Actually, my partner is the third vice president on the state board, and so we have people that do my job, crime reduction, community outreach, and those kind of things all over the state of Texas, or in part of the Texas Crime Prevention Association. And we have a big annual conference. This year it's going to be in San Antonio in July. And so those guys are guys and gals or officers that do crime prevention in other parts of the state, just like I do here. And so that would be a good way to maybe hook up, and those individual Houston area, Dallas, all those other chapters would have a point of contact in their specific area that deal with crime reduction issues.
That's excellent. And Ken has already promised me that you guys will do it again, and we'll have more sessions like this. So thank you. But before we wrap up, and I just, again, cannot say thank you enough for how much we appreciate this, and we're going to do more of this. And so your phones will be ringing. Ken, even though you're retiring, you're still on the hook with us. I just want you to know I'm putting it out there. But last question, Ken, I want to leave it with a good note. You told me a story about what happened during the ice storm, about the police association and nearby restaurants and the suppliers all getting together and helping with. Could you, before we close out, would you just tell that story, please?
Sure. At the beginning of the ice storm, it became apparent that, a lot of our officers were not going to be able to go home. A lot of them spent 3 or 4 days straight sleeping on the floors at the police department and then working their patrol shifts. We have one type of car that was really successful. It's a 4-wheel drive vehicle that was able to go up and get paramedics and people to live up in Northwest Hills out of their homes because of its ability to climb. But my job at the time was, trying to not only find hotels for maybe some officers to stay in, but to feed them. And we never lost power or water here at our association hall, where we have a very nice kitchen, with the top of the line Vulcan equipment. And so we've always had that here. And sometimes we feed our officers, and Frank is an outstanding cook, and he does a lot of our cooking for us. But at that time, no one was able to go to work. Food was spoiling. We ended up hiring for a week 2 of the cooks from Cisco's, which is down on East 7th Street, a very famous restaurant here. And me and another gentleman by the name of Bino Cadenas were here for almost 7 straight days, cooking meals 3 times a day, cracking thousands and thousands of eggs for tacos and bacon and just doing that type of work. And, of course, y'all know it's backbreaking work because you deal with it every day. But we did that for 7 days, and we had great partners like Joe's Bakery. HEB was fantastic. Trader Joe's were all throwing their food away. And I'm talking high dollar steaks, and they, I mean, they're
We
like,
didn't
hey,
want to
if
serve
you
it
want,
to you, did we?
exactly, and if you want it, come pick it up. You
Yep.
know, it's sad because they have very stringent rules on employees not being able to take that type of thing home, but they're more than
We gave it
welcome.
to employees.
Yeah, they were very, I mean, that we for the last 3 or 4 days ate great. You know, we had filet mignon, we had briskets and all kinds of stuff. And I still have stuff in the freezer here that was donated by Trader Joe's and HEB because they were going to throw it away. And it brought tears to my eyes to know we have people in the community that suffer every day from homelessness, and to see probably way over $100,000 of meat being thrown in the trash, and it just killed me to see that. But I understand all the rules and why. But just everyone came together. The restaurant community came together. A lot of people say, come pick up our eggs, come pick up all the stuff that we have in our kitchens because we can't use it. It's just going to be thrown out. So we cooked 3 meals a day for 7 straight days here at the hall, and we couldn't have done it without the restaurant industry, and we also couldn't have done it without HEB and Trader Joe's.
That's what we do. We had a comment by one of our friends in the industry, Skeeter Miller, who said, take all of your extra officers and send them down to the county line on the Riverwalk.
All right.
All the extra, whether they're Austin or Dallas. But again, we're at that time. Again, I cannot express our gratitude and appreciation. Ken and Frank will be in touch. Vanessa, you're always a great resource. Thank you for coming on. To our members, thank you. We're here for you. If you have any other questions, please send me an email, and we'll ask Ken if I can't answer, or Frank can get back to you. But this is not the last time we do this. Have a great day. Be safe, and we'll see you. Oh, by the way, next Wednesday, we will be at Prep ATX. And if you don't have anything to do, come on out, members. The other thing, Vanessa, did you want to end this by talking about the scholarships that we have?
Yes, we have 3 $5,000 scholarships that we are offering to students. So who qualifies? You're a student in high school pursuing higher education in culinary arts or hospitality. You can be a kid of a Greater Austin chapter member to qualify, or you can actually be in higher education pursuing culinary arts and hospitality. So all 3 of those categories can apply and have the opportunity to get a $5,000 scholarship.
Great. Everyone, thank you very much. Frank, it was nice meeting you guys. Take care.
And
Have
I
a
look
great
forward
day
to
and be
more
safe out there, okay?
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.